y'all, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to check out another one of my videos. And in today's video, I'm doing another ranking the last, I usually do 10 palettes that I tried type of video, but I'm actually going to change it up a little bit and do 5 palettes for this video. Ever since the baby came, I've been thinking about getting back into doing my palette Palooza, where I share with you guys the last 10 palettes that I tried, give you guys my review, I give you guys swatches, I give you guys all the looks that I created with the palettes. It's a pretty intense video, but I just haven't been able to find the time to record for that length of a time, and also just know that it would take me probably a week to edit at this point, because that video I put out after she was born, where I already pre-filmed everything, did take me that long to edit together. So I was thinking that I could change it up for a little while. We can see how this goes. These Palette Palooza videos are usually very long anyway, like over 30 minutes usually. So I'm going to cut it in half and just do 5 palettes for this video. Hopefully it'll be a bit shorter, be a bit easier for me to edit. And yeah, so we're going to go over the last 5 palettes that I tried that I have my full review on. And with that said, let's just dive right into it. I was all ready to film, started my intro, and Sophia woke up. So, you're gonna hear baby noises. She's just chilling with me right next to me as I am recording. We'll see. I'm sure I'm gonna be holding her at some point, but hopefully she'll be a good girl, because mommy would like to get this recorded today since I'm all geared up for it. Anyway, moving on, as always, I start with the bottom of the countdown. So the number 5 palette for this video, and I had to give it to the Fantasy Cosmetica Barred palette, mainly because I did have those issues. Out of all the looks that I did, I think I did 5 or so looks. I can't remember exactly. You guys are going to see them on the screen, but 2 of them I did struggle really hard with the green one, and then even after that, once I realized that it was mainly the green shade causing issues, I still had to be very careful and pretty much baby that shade in order to get it to work for me, or just use it by itself, or just try to just leave it alone, like pack it on and leave it alone, was how I kind of treated that green after I realized that this shade was the problem. If you saw my review video, you heard me say that like I was just struggling. You saw in 2 out of the 3 looks that I shared, I was having patching issues, and I've continued to try it, and it is just that shade right there, right, little girl? It is just the green shade that really just doesn't like to work with other shades, doesn't like to be blended too much, just doesn't like some primers. Honestly, sometimes it'll work out just fine if I just use it by itself and leave it alone. Other times it just doesn't want to work at all, like period, by itself or with other shades. So it's just a tricky shadow that I didn't like. Besides that, all the other mattes were fine. They're a little bit, as I described in the video, more of a thinner consistency, especially in comparison to the shimmers, because the shimmers are a bit thicker, but they go on beautifully. They have nice pigmentation. You can build it up, and I didn't have any issues, and they all, all 3 of those work so beautifully together. They're very nice to work with. And then the shimmers in this palette are very nice. I definitely preferred that middle row right across Lore, Legend, and Mythic. It is just so very beautiful, especially Mythic. It's just stunning. It's like liquid copper. It's gorgeous. Wanderer was a little bit chunky, just not in a bad way, not in a horrible way. It's just a little bit flaky when I would use it on my eyes. And then Charismatic, it's a nice inner corner highlight. That's the only way I used it. So it's not too exciting, but it works great for an inner corner highlight. So as a whole, is this palette a total dud and a total like waste of your time and money? Not really, because the only shade out of here that I would consider a dud is the green. However, when you're a green lover like me, or you're reaching for a little 9pan palette and only 4 of the shades in that palette are mattes, it does have a little bit of a detraction to the palette for me when I come into it, knowing that that green one, either I'm going to have to be very careful with it, or it's going to totally ruin my look if it just doesn't like me that day for whatever reason. So that's the biggest reason why I'm putting it at the bottom of the countdown, just because it does have those issues. And I mean, if you're someone who doesn't like that shade and it doesn't bother you, you're picking it up on sale, you think it's totally worth it, I think you'll still enjoy the looks that you get with it, just going into the palette being aware. But at the retail price, looking back at it, knowing how much I love green, I do have a little bit of regret purchase when it comes to this palette. I still think the color story is beautiful, but I just wish I could use the color story to its fullest potential. But if you want gorgeous shimmers that are in these tones, and if you like more so these type of mattes, and those are the type of mattes that you jive with anyway, you'll get really pretty looks out of it for sure. Okay, for my number 4 palette, it's going to be the Gourmande Girls Ethereal palette. And the biggest reason this is getting number 4 is because it is an all shimmer palette. And you guys know me, my heart tends to be with the mattes when it comes to eyeshadows, though the shimmers are beautiful. And for me reviewing this palette, I actually just used it with my Blend Bunny Blends palette. It's a match made in heaven, great combination. And it's what's on my eyes today. Those 2 are what I used on my eyes today. But we're just going to be talking about the Ethereal palette and kind of just giving you guys my thoughts. And overall, if you want a very beautiful, shimmery, intensely sparkly type of all shimmer palette from a really solid indie brand that you want to support, I think this is a fantastic one to opt for. I was really happy and pleased with all the looks that I got out of it. Now, knowing the price of this palette, For me, it's a little bit steep, but again, take into consideration that I am someone who likes an all shimmer palette. So for me, you know, spending a lot of money on multi-chromes and duochromes and that type of thing isn't typically what I like to spend my money on. I'd rather spend on a bigger palette with more, you know, varying shades of matte shadows to be able to create more looks and whatnot. But if you're someone who is that lover of, you know, flakier shadows, you're making all sorts of noises down here, aren't you? But if you're someone who loves all of the sparkle, you love all of like the flakier, you know, very shimmery, very sparkly type of shadows, then maybe this is the type of palette that will be for you, and you'll see value in the palette for the price and whatnot. For me personally, as I said, it is a bit steep, so if you were asking me if I think it's worth the price, I would say on sale, definitely it would be worth the price on scooping up. I do have an affiliate code if you're curious, but you could always wait for a sale. We're coming up on the holidays. I'm sure there's going to be some fantastic sales, and if you want to purchase an all shimmer palette, I feel like these type of all shimmer palettes have been released a lot in the past year or so from indie brands, and you know, some of the shades are very, you know, either close, similar, or just almost exact dupes of each other. So if you're wanting to just pick up like a one and done palette where you can play around with all of those special type of shadows, this would be a great option, because there are definitely a couple of shadows in here that I think are so pretty. I think I showed in my review video of this palette that Astra was like a dupe to one of the shades in the Heather Austin palette, and I don't know if I said it in that video, but Radiance also reminded me of a shimmer in the Saints, Angels, Sinners Get Lucky palette that you can't get a hold of anymore. So there are definitely those shades in here that would give you what you've been seeing a lot of being released when it comes to all shimmer and all of those like really special, intensely sparkly shadows from a lot of indie brands over the past years. But as a whole, it's a really nice palette. I like the varying shades in here. You get a lot of versatility when it comes to the different reflections and different colors you can put on your eyes. So if you are someone who has an all matte palette and you want to find a good shimmer palette to pair with it, this, you know, this would be a great option, and this one's a great option as well. It's definitely really, really pretty, and I like that I could get all sorts of different type of looks. I could go very neutral and pop like maybe this emerge on the lid, and I get a very neutral type of eye look, nothing too colorful, crazy, with a lot of sparkle and a lot of intensity. Or if I really wanted to step it up and get a very colorful look, I could mix and match or just pop some of these more brighter, very shimmery tones on top of a rainbow eyeshadow look, and it would be super beautiful and super intense. Are you just wanting to talk? Do you have a review to share? So in answering the question, is it worth the price? I think that's definitely going to depend on the person who is looking at purchasing it. If you like these type of shadows, like I said, or if you're someone who's more into mattes, whatnot. But quality wise, I do think it's very nice. And so far from the different types of, you know, these shadows I've been able to try from indie brands, it seems really on par quality wise with them. And I've been very pleased with how it wears and whatnot. The flakier, more thicker shadows in this palette, like Astrid and even Emerge a little bit, Pure over there, maybe a little bit of Radiance, Ethereal. The ones that are flakier and chunkier do make more of a mess on your eyes. They do definitely go all the way up to my brow bone. But there are other shades in here like Lucent and Indigo that are very smooth, and they only go up just a teeny bit on my lid, so I'm really not mad at it. But as a whole, it's a really nice palette, and literally the only reason I'm putting it at number 4 is because it's an all shimmer palette, and I've just tried so many really great palettes over the last 5 palettes that have a mixture of shimmer and mattes that they just capture my heart a little bit more than an all shimmer palette does. But that aside, quality wise, it's really nice. Okay, that didn't last long in the little baby seat. She is now snacking. So let's see if that keeps her preoccupied. But for palette number 3, it's going to be the Gourmande Girls and Doodles by the Bunny Spooked palette. The packaging on this is just so very fun, and the holographic, it's just shiny and captures your attention. But let's talk about the actual palette inside. This is a really pretty color story, and that's definitely a reason it's getting high. This was fun to play around with if you're someone who likes the more spooky side of the fall, October time period, and you want to be able to create those type of looks. I definitely think you can get that for sure with this palette. I think my favorite look that I created with this palette was the purple and green look. It was just a lot of fun. But diving into the quality of this palette, I have been really, really pleased with the quality of the shimmers. It's exactly what I found in her Ethereal palette, so I'm glad to see the consistency with the quality there. There are definitely more flakier and chunkier shadows. I think you can see that in my swatches and be able to determine which ones are chunky and which ones are more smooth. But the chunkier shadows do, as the other palette did, travel up to my brow bone, and it causes a little bit of fallout throughout the day. And then the shimmery ones are, as I said, they transfer a little bit into the crease, but honestly not bad, and overall they're very pretty and very sparkly. And even the shades that aren't super sparkly still have a lot of color to them, have a lot of pigment, they're very smooth and easy to apply, so overall very, very pretty. Like the green one, what is this, Apple Bob right there, very beautiful on your lid. It shows up with a lot of color, packs a punch with the green, and just stands out really nicely and wears really, really nicely. It doesn't have a ton of sparkle and maybe reflectiveness as some of these shadows like, you know, Pumpkin does or Trick or even, you know, Bloody, that hot pink up there. It doesn't have quite the amount of sparkle and intensity, but it still looks very pretty and it shows up very nicely, very easy to apply, and lasts the best since it doesn't have all the flaky chunkiness and, you know, shimmeriness of the other shadows. It stays on my eye really, really well, and honestly at the end of the day it almost looks like the same as when I applied it in the morning. Moving over to the mattes, as a whole I would say the quality is very, very nice. There are definitely ones that are a little bit more strong, pigmented, soft, smooth, and blendable than others. I think for me I felt like the red and the black were a little bit dry when I would touch them and whatnot. However, when I would actually use them in looks, they perform great. They would take maybe a touch or two more times into the pan to really pack them on and build them up, but they build up nicely, they work on top of each other very well, and they're very pigmented when you build them up. So even though those two are a bit more dry feeling when you touch them, a little bit more dry and, you know, maybe not as intensely pigmented when you first apply them as the other shadows, they still perform and look great. And then all the other shadows in this palette I thought were very nice and pigmented, very, you know, soft to the touch, very buttery smooth. They blended very easily, they were able to build up on top of each other pretty easily, and overall, you know, they mixed and matched. It was just a really fun combination to create looks with this palette, having the different shades in mattes and the different shades in shimmers. I really got to, you know, sit down and think in the morning and be like, okay, what do I want to put together? What do I want to pop on the lid? What am I going to mix together with the mattes? And overall, it was just very nice. I had someone ask me if like it's worth it, the palette was worth it for the price, and I do think this is a little bit pricey for the quality. And that's not saying the quality is bad. I think the quality, as I've been saying, is really good. It's very, very nice. But it is a rather expensive palette. Maybe it's just me. I mean, when I'm talking about recommending palettes to you guys, it's definitely dependent on who you are as a person, what your budget is, what you tend to pay for makeup. If you're someone who's, you know, buying Natasha Denona or Denisa Myricks and stuff like that all the time, or Pat McGrath, you probably would look at this and be like, that's not that expensive. But it just depends on where you are at and what you typically pay. But so for me, in my personal like preference and comfort zone when it comes to buying palettes, I do find it a little bit pricey for the quality. However, if you got it during a sale or something like that, that's when I think it's absolutely worth it. If it's just a little bit high for me personally, but that is definitely a personal thing. So take that with a grain of salt, but I just like to throw it out there, especially since I was sent this in PR. Sometimes I don't think about the price as much when it's sent in PR, and I don't think I mentioned that during the video, and that's one thing that I kind of regretted not mentioning during the video, because if I were to have purchased that, I definitely would have commented about it in my review video. So I just wanted to mention that here. But overall, it is a really nice palette. I did really enjoy the looks, and the quality is really nice. And if this is your first palette and first intro into Gourmande Girls as a brand, I think it's a great one to start with. Alright, moving on to my number 2 palette. This is going to go to Shroud Cosmetics, the Baddie Bean, the Hallo Bean palette. I definitely felt like my review video maybe came off a little bit harsh. I didn't mean for it to come off harsh, because quality-wise, this is a fantastic palette. But talking about the color story, there are some drawbacks for me personally. However, it is getting number 2 because I feel like this palette for me, just enjoyed using it so much more once I used it with another palette. And for this palette specifically, I used it with the It's Freaking Bats palette. And the looks that I got, like I said, I love so much. So it definitely just kind of softened me towards the palette, and it, you know, showed me that with the right companion colors, I really did enjoy this palette. And quality wise, as I said in the video, there are no issues with it at all. Just as a standalone palette, it's not my favorite. I can get definitely I would say a solid 2 looks out of this palette that I would really enjoy, that would be really unique and different from each other. But longevity wise and like creating a lot of looks out of it, it's not as much for me, just because of the color story with it being so dark and kind of grunge. I am not personally inspired as much by the color story, you know, just with this palette alone. However, like I said, using it with the It's Freaking Bats palette, I do like it. Quality, it's fantastic, so I had to put it at number 2. The biggest kind of cons for me that I mentioned in my review video with this palette is just that the 2 shimmer orange are kind of close, and the 2 matte dark shades are kind of close. It's only a, you know, 9-pan palette, so I just felt very limited and just not super inspired when I was dipping into this palette after like the first or second look. And so that for me personally was where this palette kind of, you know, fell short for me. But like I said, I grabbed my It's Freaking Bats palette out and I was pairing the 2 palettes together, and I created some really pretty looks that every time I left my table, I was like, yes, that was fun to do. I enjoyed wearing it throughout the day. So overall, even though I don't love the palette by itself, it's got a fantastic formula and it pairs beautifully with the It's Freaking Bats palette, so it's redeemed itself a little bit in my eyes. You were just falling asleep and flailing over here. What you doing? If you've never tried a Shroud Cosmetics mattes, her mattes are so pigmented and so intense. They are very, very, very easy to work with, very, you know, very nice to blend into each other. A lot of intensity when it comes to the shadows too, especially such deep tones here. You do not need to build up to get any type of look. Like you put this on, you tap, you know, into one of these and tap it on your eyes and boom, you have already got a lot of intensity. So that's really nice. And then the shimmers in here are beautiful. They're so smooth, so easy to apply. They have a lot of great pigment to them, yet they have a lot of sparkle to them as well. It's just gorgeous, and the multi-chrome in here is also really pretty. I'm not someone who's big into multi-chromes, as I think I've said in this video, but I'm not super big into multi-chromes, and this shade is definitely a pretty dark multi-chrome for me, or just a dark shade in general to have on my lid, but it is beautiful, and I had a lot of fun using it. Black Flame was a lot of fun, and Ghoulish is definitely one of my favorites. I mean, the orange, I love a good shimmer orange. You're just being very loud down here, you know that? I love a good shimmer orange, but I also liked Ghoulish. It was very pretty. All the shimmers in here were beautiful. Definitely loved them. So as a whole, if you're looking at this palette and trying to decide if you want to purchase it, if you've never tried Shroud Cosmetics and you're not sure quality, I can absolutely tell you quality is absolutely there. There is no like corners cut that I found. Like none of the mattes patched, none of the mattes were difficult to blend out, none of the mattes didn't show up. The shimmers also too, none of them were patchy, none of them, you know, like disappeared throughout the day. The more shimmery, sparkly tones would travel up into my crease, but I remember the orange. This orange is more pigmented and not as shimmery as the other Afterlife. It stayed in place really, really nice throughout the day, and I, you know, had a half cut crease, and you could still very clearly see that half cut crease at the end of the day. It was a little bit of wear up into my crease area, but nothing major. Didn't go into my brow bone, so overall very happy with that. So definitely can recommend this palette for quality wise. If you like the color story, or if you have the It's Freaking Bats and you were wanting to pick this up to pair with it and were wondering if the two would pair well together, they pair beautifully together, and I think that's definitely for me how this palette shines if I use it with that palette, because I love the grunge. I love the tones in this palette. Just I need a little bit more uniqueness and colorfulness that the It's Freaking Bats palette gives me. More lightness to the shades in the It's Freaking Bats, and then pairing it with the Hallo Bean, that's how I really came to love it. So overall, it was a bit of a journey with me for the Hallo Bean, and I hope I didn't like offend the owner or Baddie Bean at all by saying that I didn't absolutely love it in my review video. But after trying it with the It's Freaking Bats palette and just playing around with it some more, being able to have more possibilities in the looks that I created, I've definitely come to enjoy this palette. So overall quality, it's a 10 out of 10, and if you like the color story, I definitely would recommend it. Okay, so for my last one, the #1 palette, I'm going to try and put this little one to sleep. So if you hear some tapping, that's me. Anyway, for my #1 palette, let's see if I can tap with this hand so I can hold up this one. This is the Nomad Hudson Valley palette. This palette, I think, is going to surprise some because it's kind of quote-unquote neutral, but it is a fall neutral palette that I love, and I kind of kick myself that I've already done my top 10, you know, favorite neutral palettes. She's gonna snore in this video, and I'm so sorry. But because if I hadn't done my top 10 neutral palettes, I would absolutely be sticking this in it, and I can't believe I have to like wait till next year to stick it in, and whenever I do that, I feel like a year is a good time to revisit top 10 neutral palettes. Anyway, this is definitely going in it whenever I do redo that video and do my top 10, because when it comes to neutral palettes, this is a neutral palette for me personally, especially if you like Cover the Red. It's a very neutral leaning palette. It's got a lot of beautiful colors. It's so fall inspired. I think that's what I love about it too. It's got so much fall-esque-ness to the very neutral looks that I had so much fun with this palette. And also the 3 shimmers in the middle I absolutely loved. You guys know I love a lot of mattes, so I love that there were so many mattes to play with. And then the 3 shimmers in the middle, they were more of an iridescent type of shimmer, or maybe not iridescent, maybe just duochrome. I don't even know how to describe it, but like you would use them in like the top green shade. When I would use it with other shadows, it turned more yellow than lime green, which I feel like it looks lime green in the pan, but on my eyes it would be very yellow leaning. And same for that middle shade there. It looks like a peachy tone, but I would use it and it was orange. So anyway, I really enjoyed the 3 shimmers that they included. The shimmers themselves were very smooth. They weren't intensely sparkly or metallic leaning at all, but they were very nice, very smooth shimmers that gave a nice color. It wasn't like an iridescent type of color where you put it on and it was kind of see-through-ish. The color showed up really nice. It was very smooth and easy to apply, and it had a lot of sparkle to it. It wasn't anything like, you know, satiny, I don't want to say that, but it had a nice subtle type of sparkle, very flattering type of sparkle to it that I thought was very pretty, especially pairing it with all these different shades. I love combining these two, but if I wanted a very neutral look, I could just kind of stick down here to the more browns and huntery greens and get a very pretty look, or I could come up here and get a pretty bright look for a neutral. Again, this is for me neutral. I don't even know if you would call this a neutral palette, but I could stick up there and, you know, especially playing with the red, get a pretty bright color story. And overall, it was just a really nice palette, very fun to play with. And if you're new to my channel, new to Nomad Cosmetics, their mattes are so smooth. They're one of my favorite type of matte formulas when it comes to indie brands. I just love working with them. And I had someone recently leave me a comment and say, I'd love to hear like brands that have your favorite matte formula and brands that have your favorite shimmer formulas. I feel like that'd be a really fun video to do, so it's on my list. I have not gotten around to it yet. Let me know if you'd like to see it. Maybe that'll kind of kick it up the list so I actually do it a little bit sooner rather than later. But if you're curious, Nomad will definitely be in the video for one of my top favorite matte eyeshadow formulas because it's just so smooth, so pigmented, so creamy. It's lovely to work with. It's lovely to go on. Very pigmented when you put it on your eyes. Very easy to blend into each other. Very nicely and vivid, especially like that red. It's just as bright as you would imagine seeing it in the pan. It is just that bright on your eyes, so that's lovely. And just so easy to work with, I think is the biggest thing. It's very easy and effortless to work with. So if you're someone who's newer to eyeshadow, I feel like this would be a great formula to go with because I don't think I've ever had a Nomad palette where I was working with the mattes and I ever had like one stick or one patch or one not last well on my eyes. Like they hold up so nicely. They're so easy to work with. Can't recommend them enough. And then the shimmers, as I said, all three of these shimmers I feel like are very consistently the same. It's not like a bunch of different type of formulas. I would describe it as like a solid shimmer with a subtle sparkle to it. So I thought it was really, really nice. And overall, I think they just killed it with this palette. They did a great job with the color story. They did a great job, you know, picking which mattes and which shimmers to put in here. I feel like it's a little redundant on this side over here with the greens and the neutrals just because some of those greens, I don't know, the two, what is it, Bed and Breakfast and Mountain Hike, I can't really point to it because I'm holding her, but these two right here were a little bit close. They were different, but they were also close, especially when you have these other shades over here that you can mix and match and kind of get the same effect. So that felt a little bit redundant, but besides that, that's literally the only area that I was like, did you need to have so many so close together? So overall, I'm just very happy with it. It's a nice size, nice color story, great for the season. Palette packaging is also just so beautiful, definitely like a display piece for me, so I'm looking forward to putting it back there somewhere to display behind me because it's just beautiful. I love the autumn phases. I love all the autumn colors that you see this time of year, and yeah, it's just a really solid palette. So considering how much I enjoyed this palette, even though it's a more neutral for me, I like these type of neutral tones, so considering how all the looks that I did, I really did enjoy, considering how the matte formula is just so very nice, and then considering how much I like the ease and just the, you know, simple beauty of their shimmers, I had to give it #1 in today's video. Alright, so that was a bit of a ride for me to record, and hopefully I can edit this together and cut out all the parts that I had to stop and take care of little miss. She's finally falling asleep. A couple times during the video I thought she would fall asleep and just chill in my arms, and that didn't happen, and that's okay. But anyway, lesson learned, I should just stick to doing will I buys with her because they're a little less stressful than trying to hold up palettes and review them. But anyway, that has nothing to do with you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, even if it was a little, you know, a little bit more stunted or chopped up than my videos usually are when I edit this together. But overall, I hope you guys still enjoyed the video. I hope you guys still found the reviews for these palettes helpful. And hopefully, like I said, you guys don't mind me doing just 5 palettes instead of my usual 10. And hopefully I can get these videos out to you sooner because it's definitely a drawback to, you know, my videos being so long and having 10 palettes in the video. It's just they're so long, they take a long time to edit. I feel like I'm very slow getting these recorded and getting these out to you guys. So hopefully if this is a bit easier for me, I can get more videos out to you and I can get through more palettes quicker. But yeah, that is going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, if you want to follow me over on Instagram, I'm LadyKatie92 over there, and I post reels, up close eye pictures, all that sort of thing, LadyKatie92. And with all that said, that's going to do it for me. I'm going to go finish trying to put this little girl to bed, and yeah, hope you guys have a fantastic day. I'll see you in my next one. Bye.